not sure what it is I want to express today. I'm feeling pretty withdrawn with my energy. I don't feel a need to really do anything. And sometimes it's strange to have that feeling in today's culture, in today's society, because the Western world is much more go, 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 do, do, do. Productivity, capitalism, consumerism, grind culture, hustle culture, all that stuff. And this overemphasis on doing and productivity, I think, actually generates from a shadow of fear, lack, poverty consciousness, mistrust in God, in nature. When you think about patience and trust and faith and just believing that it all comes from God, from source, from the universe, and everything, there is abundance all around us. It's just our mind's limited ability to perceive that makes us feel that lack. And I feel like the culture that has been created in society today, that's predominating in the collective, is one of fear, shame. I feel like those are the two driving influences of most of the collective unconscious. And it comes out in all different ways. Money's just one of them, but other shadows express themselves in different ways when it comes to different political ideologies, different ideologies about divine masculine, divine feminine, toxic masculinity, toxic femininity. And until each individual can start to reflect and become more conscious and aware of themselves, their own limiting beliefs, and how their perception and beliefs of reality are determining their actions, which result in consequences. So it's this inner state that causes certain ways of being or acting, and then we experience the result of our inner state, and then we determine that's how the world is. But when you can change your inner state and you can see things differently, you start experiencing different results. There's a quote that says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. So I've spent a lot of time analyzing myself and society. I enjoy studying things, spirituality, different religions, philosophy, psychology. There's a few practices that have really helped me. One is meditation, another is shadow work, and another is different energy practices. There's various ones that people can select and choose. The ones that I have practiced for meditation are transcendental meditation. For shadow work, the Mankind Project, and for energy practices, qigong. And in these three things in combination, I feel like have really helped me. And then obviously I have my own creative projects and my own self-study, reading different books, studying different things. I have different degrees in different areas: education, Vedic science, screenwriting are the three master's degrees I have, and then a bachelor's in physical education. And then all the self-study has been more in terms of transpersonal psychology, personal development, spirituality. I started doing a PhD in transpersonal psychology about 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, and then stopped when I had a job change, moved across the country, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, what I'm getting at is integration within yourself, integrating the extremes. If you have extremes in your views, sometimes you will see that reflected back to you in your reality, and then we can start demonizing the opposite of the extreme that we are identified with. So an example of this would be, toxic masculinity and, feminism. And the roots of these things, it's like the roots of feminism come from the toxic masculine that has oppressed the feminine, and then the feminism is in equal proportion as extreme as the toxic masculinity. So it just becomes that, both sides pointing fingers at each other instead of integrating and finding the harmony and balance of masculine and feminine, which I think is what is happening at large in the collective today. I feel like that's what's happening within the individuals in society, is we are realizing we are both, even whether you're gendered as a male or female, whether you have a penis or a vagina, every human being has the capacity to experience masculine energy and feminine energy. And these energies represent different things. And I think when we get too attached or over-identify with the way things are, we can fall into one extreme or one polarity and not see the full picture. And I think collectively what's happening is we are integrating and upgrading as human beings, as individuals and collectively, so that we can start to see things more completely, to experience that integration of totality of these energies within ourselves, so that we can live more ideally in more harmony with each other and create a better society. One of the examples that I have come to realize recently within myself, over my last few years, what I've been studying and practicing has been semen retention, brahmacharya. So the absolute path, the path of the ultimate, which is using your semen, channeling it up your spine to feed and nourish your brain for spiritual purposes, for enlightenment. That has been something I've been practicing on and off for about, I would say really pretty intensely, for about 3 years. And I would say it probably even started before that, about, maybe 6 years that I've dabbled with it, but really actually pretty focused for the last 3 years. And the more that I have uncovered this awareness in my own shadows and where this practice originated, in spiritual traditions, we have these celibate Puritan beliefs that can be projected. And if things are oppressed, then it just, there's a healthy balance and there's an integrated way to experience our own sexuality. And then there are the extremes, which is, celibacy in one direction and complete freedom and hedonism in the other direction. And you can actually see on the board, I have created like kind of a Venn diagram, basically quadrants of these different experiences. And I might share what I created on the computer. I threw it into ChatGPT. I know, AI, blah, blah, blah. It's stupid. But it does help speed up the workflow and create something that would take me much longer. But that's something for another time, maybe. Anyway, what was I saying? The integration of the extremes. So for me, I think I had some shame around my sexuality, and then that created this overindulgence in this shadow of I had suppressed my feminine. So what I started doing was idealizing the feminine, worshiping women, in feeling like I could only receive that feminine energy through romance or love or sex, and not being in touch and in tune with my own inner feminine energy. Even though I present and predominantly have this masculine energy, I also have a feminine side. And the feminine side, if you look up what the feminine and masculine represents, like masculine is more structure, order, stability, groundedness, decision-making, discernment, action, stillness. And then the feminine is expression, sensuality, love, all that beauty, art. And so for me, I grew up with a pretty masculine father figure that was, I'm not trying to go poo-poo on Papa, but we all have been conditioned by our caregivers. So we pick up on the beliefs and perceptions of the ones that raised us oftentimes. So I had that, hyper masculine with the suppressed feminine. And so what I ended up doing in my later years was worshiping the feminine. And what that led to was idolizing the women in my life, putting them on a pedestal, feeling like I could only receive love through romance and sex from women. And that was the only thing that would make me feel whole and complete, was love and sex from a woman. And getting in touch with my own inner feminine through art, creative pursuits, expressing myself. I have integrated the masculine and the feminine so that I can be more whole and complete in myself and not need a woman to complete me. So this has been something that I've learned, but there are shadows to because the opposite shadow of when a man can only receive love from the feminine through the form of a woman, the toxic side of that is either objectification of women through sex, or shaming women, demonizing women, and becoming toxic masculine, thinking women are the devil, women are sluts, women are whores. Even though usually what comes with that is that idolization of women, because it comes from shame and fear and a misunderstanding. So it's like porn, OnlyFans, these things feed that toxicity that exists within ourselves, because it's usually the unhealed shame or the unhealed fear, the unhealed feminine within you that makes you project onto others, whether in a way of idolization, objectification, porn, slut shaming, all of that. For women, having been oppressed collectively by men in our history, that creates an overcompensation and desire for freedom and liberation from this dominant masculine hierarchy, the patriarchal hierarchy, which created, I think, the feminine movement. But again, like I said, these are the extremes. And I think there's a lot for people to consider when you start to look at your own beliefs and figure out what quadrants do you operate from most of the time? Is it hypermasculine and God? Is it hypermasculine and, more hedonistic? Is it hyperfeminine and, over compensating for the freedom and the oppression? Or is it hyperfeminine and, purity of the feminine? So I think it's like what I created here, and I'll try to put in the other diagram, but it shows like this, there's the semen retention that comes from purity. There's for the masculine, and then for the women, there's Mother Divine and, the Mary Magdalene whore split, and that complex of like, you have to be this pure, chaste person. And that is the same for both masculine and feminine. There's two different ways of experiencing it. It's just different. And then the same comes, it's like two sides of the same coin for, an OnlyFans model and some guy who's addicted to porn and thinks women are whores. Those two things come from the same shame, fear, oppression, rejection of understanding your own energies. And I feel like what has helped me is meditation for self-awareness, shadow work to start to understand and look at some of my own patterns, behaviors, fear, shame, judgments. And then I analyze, from a bigger perspective. I try to zoom out and see it from the bigger picture in society and see how these things are expressed culturally and societally, because our culture and our society is just a collection of the individuals. And if the individuals, like we said before, it comes down to perception. If we can look at ourselves, our own shadows, our own beliefs, our own judgments, and we can start to integrate instead of blaming and shaming others. If we can look at ourselves with more honesty, authenticity, integrity, accountability, we can start to integrate whatever extremes we might experience, and we can take those things into ourselves, experience that totality, breathe into our own body and embody this ability to become consciously aware of our desires, of our impulses, of our beliefs, so that we have more agency and choice and freedom, and we're not so driven by compulsion or by fear or by shame. And I feel like as we do that individually, every individual that does that work is benefiting the collective and helping uplift society. So my suggestion to everybody out there is to do this work for yourself, to become more self-aware, to look at your own beliefs, your own judgments, to heal your own feelings, to look at things like masculinity, femininity, God, the devil, good and evil, shame and fear, to not repress or suppress things within yourself, and not to oppress others, not to demonize others, but to look at things with more compassion, with more curiosity, with more acceptance, and knowing that just because you are studying something doesn't mean you have to believe it. You can study things and see how they feel. See if it resonates with truth. Sit within yourself. Free yourself from the judgment, from the shame, from the fear, and just try to breathe and embody more acceptance, more truth, more love, without repressing or rejecting, and allow yourself to feel whatever comes up and look at it with curiosity and less judgment, more compassion. Because I feel like the more people that do this work individually, it will ripple out and influence the collective. And like we said before, when you change the way you see things, what is it? When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. So it's like outer is a reflection of inner. The more people that do this inner work, it will ripple out and it will create a better experience of reality for the collective, because we do share a co-created reality based on all the individuals that are here. At our essence, I truly believe we are all of the same source, whether you call it God, universe, nature, spirit, self. We are all fractals of that one infinite consciousness, having experiences through different vessels, but we are not separate. So each person who can integrate that small self or ego or individual and realize their own God self, their own connection with all that is, their own consciousness, their own awareness, they can grow back into the fullest version of themselves and integrate. But this process of integration happens through awareness, through allowing yourself to feel what you feel, doing the shadow work, not repressing. We have to allow ourselves to feel those feelings. We can't suppress and repress our sexual desires out of shame or fear. That doesn't mean we have to overcompensate and, go in that direction of becoming, a OnlyFans model or a porn star or whatever you might feel that is for you. Integration, healthy embodiment, realization we are human beings, we have sexual desire, and that is not a bad thing. Becoming a healthy and whole individual, realizing our own divinity, our own humanity. We are both human and divine. So we have the ability to experience so much. And anytime we repress, suppress, or deny, we are limiting our capacity to experience our own fullness and then creating more extreme polarity within ourselves, which is then reflected back to us through the collective. Anyway, I hope you're doing good. If you want some help, if you want someone to talk to, some coaching, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I would suggest, check out the Align Method, the other videos I've created, developing your own awareness practices through meditation, prayer, communion with the higher power, whether you call it God, universe, nature, self, spirit, consciousness. Looking within yourself, seeing what limiting beliefs you might hold around different things, whether it's religion, sexuality, healing any trauma you might have stored in your body and your physiology, learning how to somatically experience your body, feel the sensations in your body, let the emotions come through, flow through, let it come, let it go. If you need to cry, you can cry, that's okay. If you need to punch, if you need to yell, find a safe way to express whatever energy needs to come through you. Find ways to move that energy. It's another reason why I feel like shadow work and qigong are really beneficial, because meditation can be very still and silent for the awareness, but then to integrate, sometimes it helps to have these more physical, embodied practices. Anybody out there going through a hard time, I wish you the best. God bless. Good luck. I love you. All right. See you later.